Chapter 1: The Rise of Grand Hollow Stadium. Grand Hollow Stadium was once the pinnacle of pride and joy for the city of Crestfall. Built in the early 1960s, it hosted countless football games, concerts, and community events. The stadium could hold over 50,000 people, and on game days, it would be packed with cheering fans, their roars echoing across the city. The stadium was designed by the renowned architect Richard Holloway, whose vision was to create a grand arena that would stand the test of time. And for a while, it did. The stadium became the heart of Crestfall, a place where memories were made and dreams were realized. But as years passed, the stadium fell into disrepair. Newer, more modern arenas drew the crowds away, and Grand Hollow was eventually abandoned. It stood empty for decades, slowly crumbling and forgotten by time. Chapter 2: The Tragic History. The decline of Grand Hollow Stadium began with a series of tragic incidents. In the late 1980s, during a championship game, a freak accident occurred. A section of the bleachers collapsed, killing 15 spectators and injuring dozens more. The cause of the collapse was never fully determined, and rumors of sabotage and cursed land began to circulate. The tragedy didn't end there. A few years later, during a concert, a fire broke out in the concession stands, trapping and killing several people. The stadium's reputation was further tarnished, and it was eventually shut down for good. The city council decided to leave it as a haunting reminder of the past, a monument to the lives lost and the dreams shattered. Chapter 3: The Legend of the Haunted Stadium. Over the years, tales of Grand Hollow Stadium being haunted spread through Crestfall. Locals spoke of ghostly apparitions seen wandering the field, strange noises echoing through the empty stands, and a cold, malevolent presence that seemed to watch over the stadium. It became a place of dread, avoided by all except for the bravest or most foolish thrill-seekers. The legend grew with each passing year. Some claimed to have seen the spirits of the victims of the bleacher collapse, eternally stuck in the moment of their demise. Others spoke of a spectral fire, flickering in the night, accompanied by the screams of those who perished in the blaze. The most chilling tales involved the ghost of Thomas Hargrove, a former football player turned asylum inmate, whose restless spirit was said to roam the stadium grounds. Chapter 4: The Paranormal Investigation. Intrigued by the stories, a team of paranormal investigators decided to explore Grand Hollow Stadium. Led by Dr. Emily Carter, a renowned parapsychologist, the team included her assistant Jake, tech expert Lisa, and cameraman Matt. They were determined to uncover the truth behind the haunting. They arrived at the stadium just before dusk, their van packed with equipment. The gates, rusted and overgrown with ivy, creaked open reluctantly as they entered. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the stadium loomed before them, dark and foreboding. Emily had done extensive research on the stadium's history and was determined to document any paranormal activity they encountered. She briefed her team on the plan. They would set up cameras around the stadium, conduct EVP sessions, and use thermal imaging to detect any unusual temperature fluctuations. Chapter 5: The First Night. As night fell, the team set up their base camp in the locker rooms. They placed cameras around the stadium, hoping to capture any paranormal activity. Emily, Jake, Lisa, and Matt took turns monitoring the feeds and exploring the grounds. Around midnight, strange things began to happen. The temperature dropped suddenly, and the sound of distant cheering filled the air, as if an invisible crowd was watching a game. Shadows flitted across the field, and the faint smell of smoke wafted through the corridors. Jake and Lisa, exploring the bleachers, saw ghostly figures sitting in the stands, their faces pale and expressionless. When they tried to approach, the figures vanished, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of sadness and fear. Chapter 6: The Locker Room Incident. Back in the locker rooms, Emily and Matt experienced their own horrors. As they reviewed the footage, the lights flickered, and the air grew colder. Suddenly, the lockers began to bang open and shut on their own, and a chilling voice echoed through the room, whispering unintelligible words. Emily tried to communicate with the spirit, asking for a sign. The voice grew louder, more frantic, and the lockers slammed shut with such force that they dented. The smell of smoke intensified, and a shadowy figure appeared in the doorway, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Chapter 7: The Unraveling. Frightened but determined, the team regrouped and decided to delve deeper into the stadium's history. They discovered that the land on which Grand Hollow was built had a dark past. Before the stadium, it was the site of a mental asylum in the 19th century. The asylum was notorious for its cruel treatment of patients, many of whom died under mysterious circumstances. The most infamous patient was a man named Thomas Hargrove, a former football player who was committed after a series of violent outbursts. He was believed to have died in the asylum fire, but his body was never found. Locals whispered that his vengeful spirit haunted the stadium, seeking revenge for his untimely death. Chapter 8: The Keeper's Tale. Determined to put the spirits to rest, Emily decided to find out more about the stadium's keeper, the man who had looked after it for years before it was abandoned. She tracked down an elderly man named Henry, who had been the stadium's caretaker during its heyday. Henry lived in a small, dilapidated house on the outskirts of Crestfall. He was reluctant to talk at first, but Emily's persistence paid off. He revealed a chilling tale of how he had witnessed the accidents and the strange occurrences that followed. He spoke of ghostly apparitions, unexplained noises, and a sense of malevolence that seemed to grow stronger over time. Henry also mentioned Thomas Hargrove and the asylum's dark history. He believed that the spirits of the asylum's patients, along with those who had died in the stadium, were trapped in a cycle of torment. The only way to break the cycle, he said, was to find Thomas's remains and give him a proper burial. Chapter 9: The Search for Thomas. Armed with this new information, the team decided to search the stadium grounds for any signs of Thomas Hargrove's remains. They combed through the debris, checking every nook and cranny. The task was daunting, but they were determined to find the truth. After hours of searching, they stumbled upon a hidden room beneath the bleachers. Inside, they found old medical equipment, rusted and covered in dust. In the corner, they discovered a small, charred box. Inside the box were the remains of Thomas Hargrove, along with a journal detailing his final days. The journal revealed that Thomas had been tormented by the spirits of the asylum's patients. They blamed him for their suffering and sought revenge. In his final entry, Thomas begged for forgiveness and expressed his hope that one day, someone would set him free. Chapter 10: The Confrontation. With Thomas's remains in hand, Emily prepared for the cleansing ritual. The team gathered in the center of the field, surrounded by their equipment and candles. Emily began the ritual, chanting words of peace and release. As she chanted, the air grew colder, and the ground trembled. Ghostly figures emerged from the shadows, their faces twisted with anger and pain. The smell of smoke filled the air, and the sound of crackling flames echoed around them. Suddenly, Thomas Hargrove's spirit appeared, his eyes blazing with fury. He charged at Emily, who stood her ground, continuing the ritual. The spirits of the asylum patients surrounded Thomas, holding him back. With one final, deafening roar, Thomas and the other spirits vanished, and the stadium fell silent. Chapter 11: The Aftermath. The team left Grand Hollow Stadium as the first light of dawn broke. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive atmosphere had lifted. Emily, Jake, Lisa, and Matt were exhausted but relieved, knowing they had helped bring peace to the restless spirits. Grand Hollow Stadium was eventually demolished, and a memorial park was built in its place to honor the lives lost in the accidents and the asylum. The haunting stories faded, replaced by tales of bravery and the power of confronting one's fears. Years later, the legend of Grand Hollow Stadium became a story told around campfires, a cautionary tale of the consequences of neglecting history and the spirits that linger. Though the stadium was gone, the memories and the lessons remained, a reminder that some places are haunted not just by ghosts, but by the echoes of the past. As Emily and her team moved on to other investigations, they carried with them the knowledge that even the darkest places could be brought to light. Grand Hollow Stadium had left its mark on them, a testament to the power of determination, the importance of facing one's fears, and the enduring impact of history. In Crestfall, the Memorial Park stood as a symbol of remembrance and peace, a place where people could reflect on the past and find solace in the present. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the moon was full and the wind whispered through the trees, the faint sound of cheering could still be heard, a ghostly echo of the stadium that once was.
Don't forget to subscribe.